Hello class, I'm sure that as you was getting your seat, you was noticing up here I have the lunch kit sitting on my desk. I noticed a lot of you staring at it a while ago. And what we're going to do today is we're going to discuss this matter of fractions in math and how that it happens every day we use fractions. And out of curiosity, how many of you this morning failed to get up early enough to have breakfast, so you decided to go ahead and on the way here, as you were riding the school bus or having your parents bring you here to school, you decided to get in the lunch kit and open it up and then start eating part of your sandwich? How many of you? Let me see the hands. There's quite a few of you that did that. You decided you would want to have breakfast, you wanted to hurry up, sleep, you just want to sleep. So you got up late and you're rushing, grabbing everything, hurrying up. And then on the way here, it started hitting you. You were hungry, you wanted to eat, so you decided to get in your lunch kit. And I have posted up here on the board a similar situation where Jessica had 2/3 of a sandwich left, Jacob had 3, and we're going to have to find out what the total sum of adding these fractions is. And what we have here is we have part of the fraction here, 2/3 plus 3 means as a whole. Therefore, Jacob didn't touch any of his sandwiches Mom had made. So on this one here, we don't have to look for a common denominator, since we only have the one fraction. And then when you go in to add the 3 Jacob had, your total sum will be 3 2/3 sandwiches between Jessica and Jacob. And what I have for you is I have some sheets here that have the principles of fractions, of adding and subtracting, as well as word problems, where you're going to be given some information stated in words, and on that you're going to have a word chart that's going to come provided with it to give you an idea of what keywords to look for so you know what function you're supposed to perform. And say, for example, on this here, you're going to have your fractions like you learned last year of how to reduce them. That's going to be on step 3, or simplify, after we do the completing of the adding and subtracting and see what the answer is. Then see if it can be reduced any further. And also in the beginning, when you have your fractions, say for example 1/4, what would be the top number on the fraction? What would be the 1 representing? It's called a numerator. Your bottom number on your fraction 1/4 is going to be the number 4, and that's your denominator. And on this one here, when you have adding and subtracting, you looked at the denominator to see, is the same denominator on both fractions? And on this one we see we have 1/4 plus 1/4. Therefore, you don't have to worry about finding a least common denominator because they're both the same. And when it comes to adding and subtracting, you only are going to add and subtract your numerators. So you have the equation equal 1 plus 1 over 4. Total that up, and that is 2/4. You first of all look at the denominator. If the same, you don't have to make an equivalent for least common, then you add the numerator only. Then you get your answer, and then, as I mentioned earlier, on step 3, you go through and reduce it if necessary. And on this one, we see that we can reduce this one. And what you have to do is find out what you can divide both the numerator and denominator by. And for the example 2/4, you divide by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 1/2. And therefore, your answer on this one's going to be 1/2. However, if you have differing denominators in your given equation that you're going to be solving, what you're going to need to do is to go through and find out what the least common denominator is going to be. And for example, on this one, we have 1/2 plus 1/4. So we're going to have to find out what the least common denominator is. And we see here that it's going to be 4. We take the larger number on the denominator, it's 4, and we see that 2 can divide into 4. And since this is not going to be changing on the bottom fraction in the equation here, we can go ahead and transfer that over. On this one, we have to find out what we're going to have to multiply the number 2 by to equal 4, and that's going to be 2. And you perform the same on the top, the numerator. What you do to the denominator, you must do to the numerator. So we have our new equivalence is 2/4 plus 1/4, and that's going to be 3/4. Because again, we're only adding the numerator. Denominator remains the same. And on here, your final answer is 3/4, since we don't have anything necessary to reduce. It's in the smallest amount already. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have some sheets here that you're going to be working on for the next 30 minutes. And one of them here is your adding of fractions that you see here. Then you have one for totally subtracting. It's only subtracting on this sheet. And then after completing those, I have a word chart here for your word problems that's on this following page here. And you're going to have the word chart here to show you other words that can be used for the function of subtracting and adding. And you'll need to look and read carefully what is posted here. You have given information and the questions involving these fractions here. So you're going to have to be able to go through and read that and figure out if you're adding or subtracting. And what I'm going to do is have everybody start in section A, where we're going to have the adding of the fractions. And as you complete, I want you to get up and put the finished item with your name and date in your answers circle into the basket there at the entrance. And then, when you're done, go to the next one, which will be your subtracting. And then your final destination is going to be your word equations that you're going to have to do. And you'll have 30 minutes to complete those 3. And if for any reason any of you get done early, I'm going to have a little bit of a challenge here where the denominators on both these sheets, one's for adding and subtracting, it's called Math is Fun Worksheet. I'm going to have you pick up one of these and work on this at your desk once you've completed the other 3. And do this quietly while the others are finishing up the equations. And I want to see how well you do on this matter of the fractions, with it being higher. It's going to make it a little bit more difficult to figure out the least common denominator with it being higher numbers. And you have to find out and make sure that both denominators can divide evenly into what you come up with. And I want to see how well you can do on this here. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to have you go ahead and start that. And we're going to have a quick review afterwards. And it'll only be a few minutes after you complete these items. And so while you're going ahead and just getting started, I'm going to get ready for the review, and that will be just a few minutes. Okay, I'm going to give you just a couple more minutes here, and we're going to go ahead and get started on the review. And once you're done with that problem you're working on, I want you to go ahead and set it in the basket and come back to your seats. And as we discussed earlier, a fraction, when it's represented as here, is part of a whole. And then we know that you have 2 components on a fraction. You have your top number, and what is that called? Emily? It's a numerator. And what's the bottom number known? 1? It's a denominator. And so what we have to do when adding is we have to make sure that both denominators are the same. And when they vary as here, 1/2 and 1/4, what's the next term we have to look for? What's the item we're going to look for on the denominator? What's it called? The least common denominator. And on here, as we did earlier, you start with that larger number and see if that smaller number on the denominator can go into it. If it does evenly, then you know you found your least common denominator. And for this, we know that on the 1/4, the 4 is going to be the denominator, since 2 can go into 4. And then you convert it over to your least common denominator. And on this one, it's going to remain the same. It's not going to change. Here we see that there's going to be double the amount. So we have to multiply the numerator by 2 to get the equivalent. And then automatically we know that the denominator is going to remain the same. It's going to be 4. Then we add the numerator 2 plus 1 to equal 3. And then you do the same process when you go through and you're doing a different function. You have to look and make sure that you watch out for this here. If you don't pay attention, you have a mixed sheet. It's going to have adding and subtracting. You're going to do it wrong. So you look for that least common denominator. If there's varying parts here on your denominator, and in this case here, we're going to be subtracting 2 minus 1, and that's going to be the final answer of 1/4. And you have to be careful so that when you later on have a mixing of these fractions and functions, you watch for that. And it's very simple. All you have to do is remember to look for the least common denominator. And then when you find that, you go ahead and convert it over, as we did here. And then add the numerator only. Leave the denominator the same. And then if there is any need to simplify, like you did last year on your given fractions you were provided on your worksheets, then go down and simplify it, and then circle that as your final answer. And as we discussed earlier, this one will not need to be reduced. It's as small as it can be on 1/4. And we thank you very much for letting me teach you about this matter of fractions. Thank you.